Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them. After 8 days had passed, it was time to circumcise the child, and he was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord.
Be seated. I want us to reflect together on the importance of names, the significance of our names. I think we take this for granted, but I think if you begin to open up the matter of your name, there's a lot to be learned. Do you know how you came to have that name? Probably your parents gave you your name. But was there a fight about the name before that occurred? If you're a grandparent, you know about, well, what are you going to name the child? Well, I don't think that's a good name, et cetera, et cetera. What do we think about when we name some child? How many of you were given family names, names that were, current in your family? Okay, a number of you. How many of you are juniors? I was thinking this shows how patrilineal we are, because now when women keep their birth names, women can be juniors too. Do we have any juniors in the? That's amazing. Any thirds? Are you a junior or a third? A third. Let's hear it for thirds. I have a third story that I'll get to in a minute. Anybody here named for a saint? That wouldn't be true if this was a cat. Okay. What's your saint? Very good. Of course, some of us incidentally were named for saints, but not intentionally. How many of you have a name which connects to the ethnicity of your ancestry? Pam? Pamela?
And that was something that was came down to you.
It came down to you. Yes?
My middle name is
Newton. So often these come down through middle names. In biblical times, names were not just incidental, they held sacred importance. To know they were your identity, so that to know somebody's name was in some sense to have power over them or to share power with them. And as you went through life, you could get a new name. You think about St. Paul, who began as Saul, and after his conversion on the road to Damascus, he gets a new name, a Greek name rather than a Hebrew name. You think of Peter, whose name means rock. It was kind of a joke. Jesus said, "I'm going to call you Rocky." And he was anything but rocky, but nevertheless, that's the foundation of the church. My friend Joe has an interesting story about his name. He is a member of a large Southern family. And his father in particular had dreams of dynastic glory for his family. So when his eldest son was born, he named him Joseph, and he was the third in the line. And Joe, in his turn, named his eldest son Joseph the fourth. So you can see what's going on. On the walls of Joe's house are oil portraits of plantation-owning ancestors. Joe complains that his children don't want to inherit those oil portraits. Joe lived his life, at least the first part of it, living out the promise of his name. He went to the right prep school. He went to the right college. He joined the right clubs. He went to the right law school. He went to the right law firm after law school. He was building this dynasty, naming his eldest son Joseph the fourth. But then something happened to him in midlife. And this happens, I think, to many of us. He sensed that something was missing in his life, that he was somehow trapped in this dynastic name business. And so, sort of almost by accident, he stumbled into the Catholic college parish in the place where he taught. And he found himself at home among these young people, among this new place. And he decided to become a Roman Catholic. And when that happens, at least for Joe, he had to pick a new confirmation name. And he was given a list or a book of saints' names to read through. And he picked the name Martin for Martin de Porres. Anybody know who Martin de Porres is? Well, he was born in the late 16th century. He was the son of in Peru, of a Spanish grandee, an aristocrat, and a Black slave woman. His father rejected him, and he became a monk, and the monks wouldn't take him because he was a man of color. So he simply worked as a custodian in the monastery. But he began to heal people, and people came by the thousands to be healed. And he also, like St. Francis, the story was that he could converse with animals. So Martin became Joe's new name. Now, everybody still calls Joe Joe, but in his heart, Joe knows that his real name is Martin. It's interesting to ponder. What would your true name be if you could rename yourself? Who would you pick? What name of significance might you have instead of the name that somebody stuck on you that you've been carrying around? I want to suggest that's a matter worthy of prayer as we enter a new year. The book of Revelation has a passage in which it says that when we get to heaven, we will be given a white stone on which is written our new name, our true name. What name would be written on your white stone, I wonder? Well, Jesus was given the name Jesus when he was circumcised on the 8th day. And the Feast of the Holy Name used to be called the Feast of the Circumcision. I'm glad they don't still call it that. That would be a bigger challenge to preach on a holy name. The name Jesus was given to him by the angel Gabriel as the Annunciation to the Virgin Mary. And it means, it's Greek, Jesus. If it were translated in English, it would be Joshua. And it's kind of interesting to think of Jesus as a Josh. It kind of underlines his humanity. But in Hebrew, the name is Yehoshua or Yeshua, and it means God saves, or the salvation of God. So this is the name that the angel gives to Jesus before he was even conceived. This is his destiny. The analogy to circumcision for Jewish males is the rite that incorporates you into the Hebrew family, into the people of Israel. And so it's analogous to the Christian rite of baptism, where we receive our name. And if you think about baptism, we're not baptized with our family name, just with our first and sometimes our middle name. Instead, we're signed with the cross on holy oil, the oil of chrism on our foreheads, and marked, says the prayer book rite, marked as Christ's own forever. So in a real sense, we're given a new family name, Christ or Christian, a new identity, a larger destiny. So that now we walk away, not just with the name that our parents gave us, but with the name that the angel gave to Jesus. That we are too are bearers of God's salvation. In other words, the incarnation, what we celebrate at Christmas, now extends out from Jesus to all of us. That we too are these strange and mysterious combination of human and divine. And our lives are not just our own, but our lives belong to the life of God. I tell this story all the time. When I first came to St. Andrews 10 years ago or so, we were having a wonderful adult education series. It was a great way to get to know people because the series all centered around how does God fit into your work life? And I thought, well, this says a lot about this community of Hopkinton. You know, what our careers are, our jobs, that's our identity. That's very important. That marks us as who our families are. And so there was one Sunday, bankers talked about God fitting into the world of banking, and lawyers and doctors and teachers and nurses and et cetera. But halfway through this proceeding, this series, I thought to myself, but let's flip that how does God fit into your work life? Flip it around and see whether the real question is, how does our life fit into the life of God? See, there's a much more difficult question. And that's the question I think that's being asked for us as we celebrate the holy name. How does my given name, John, fit in to the salvation name of God? How do I fit my life into this greater life, which we celebrate in Christmas?